So we're live with the Node.js release working group meeting on the 20th of May 2021. And we'll work from the agenda issue, which is in the Node.js release repository, and it's issue 669. And before we move on to the agenda, are there any announcements anyone would like to make? No. So the first kind of items on the agenda are to quickly review our schedules. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and open up the various release schedules. So we have the Node.js 16 release line schedule, and we are scheduled all the way up until the end of June. So all seems good. Any folks for the later ones, when they know their availability, feel free to volunteer. Any other comments on this one? Or all looks good?
Nope, looks good.
Sure. I'll try and go back and populate some of the versions. For Node 14, I guess we did have the big Node 14 release. So thanks, Danielle, Michael, and everyone who put effort into getting that one out, because that was a lot of work. Long time coming, but a lot of work, and really good to see that one go out. So I guess it may make sense for us to adjust our dates on here slightly to reflect our intent over the next few months. Does anyone have the date that the 14/17 release went out to hand?
Yeah, it went out on the 11th.
Awesome. So do you all think aiming for a patch release in June makes sense? Probably.
Yeah, sounds reasonable.
Yeah, and actually a patch in July, another minor in August, and then September some patch releases before 16 goes long-term support. That actually probably will work quite nicely. It seems like we can just leave it as is and populate dates as and when the particular volunteer has time. I think that's probably a better way of working it. If we just say which month folks are aiming for, and then it can fit the dates to align with what they can do. Okay, that seems good. And Node 12, I'm not sure if there's anything pending on Node 12.
I think there's one or two things on the staging branch, but I don't think any of it's
Pressing?
sort of, pressing.
Yeah. Okay. Guess we can always recap in a couple of weeks and gauge how it's going. That's it. I guess 15, nothing needing critical to go out on 15, and it will go end of life at the start of June, so not long to go. I guess while we're showing this, I guess after 15 goes end of life, it makes sense to move the schedule on a bit more and remove some of these entries. Okay. Next topic was the transfer of the keys from Canterbury Node.js keys to Node. Richard, would you like to just summarize what's happening here if you can?
Yep. So as you can see on the screen, this has been open for quite a long time. And it came out of a discussion that there was some compromise on the key servers that most of the keys get uploaded to. So there was a proposal that instead of sort of relying on an external network of servers that we don't really have control over, that we had somewhere that we could actually have our keys actually downloadable from. So at the moment we put the fingerprints in the Node.js README, but in order to fetch the keys, you need to fetch them from the key servers. Is it SKS? Key servers, something like that. And the worry there was at some point, some of those servers had been compromised or something. So Canterbury set up a repository demonstrating how this would work, and then the proposal was to transfer it into the Node.js organization. And it's kind of just sat in the admin repo since September 2019. I believe we have discussed this before. I can't remember exactly when, but I believe we sort of had agreement that this did seem worth pursuing, especially since we did have issues before with distributing keys, especially when we onboarded new releases, because we'd sort of push them up into the key server cloud, but then it would sort of take, a couple of weeks for it to hopefully get distributed amongst all the servers, because it's all decentralized. So there isn't sort of a master, you point your GPG installation at this server and you will guarantee to get the key. We hoped that the key would have percolated its way over to the particular server you got connected to. And I know in the past we've had people trying to use, say, the Ubuntu key servers, which is in that network, but again, it's whether the key happens to have synced itself through the entire network. So this would have been this proposal is we would have one place of truth for our keys that we can still push to the key servers, but it will be something that would be under our control, so that when we have a new releaser, we can add the keys into, say, this repo, and that will be our source of truth. And there are then additional comments about this repo about who should have access, and I think the general agreement is it will be the release team, or particularly the releasers. So the only people that would have right access to this repository, I guess the organization owners would as well, just because of the way GitHub works. But the idea will be that it will be extremely limited in terms of who could write to this, so that the idea would be that it's very controlled as to when the keys are updated, because obviously if your key is in here, you can sign a release effectively, or at least you can validate, someone can validate that release was signed by the key, a key that was in here. So I believe that this issue that's open is just trying to pick up as to where it's got stored and sort of completing the transfer, which I don't believe anyone's objected to. The idea of this being in Node.js. I don't think anyone's going to object to the release team having ownership of it. Certainly, I don't think build. I think this is originally sent to the build team, but I mean the build team, we don't really touch the GPG keys because it's all done on the releasers' machines as they promote the release. So I think it's just, from our point of view, just resurfacing that we think this is a good idea. We still think it's a good idea, and that I guess feeding back to the admin issue that yes, we would still like to transfer it over and take ownership of it. And there's a bit of bike shedding over the repository name, and I think I personally don't have an objection to calling the repository release keys over generic keys, because I agree with your last comment there, Beth, that I don't think we should mix the release keys with any other GPG keys we might have in the org.
Agreed. So we may as well be explicit. That's all it's ever going to keep.
So I think from our point of view, it was just a reaffirmation that no one thinks this is a bad idea, and just try and then work with I guess the owners, I guess yourself, Beth, as one of them, to try and get that transferred over and get the appropriate permissions set up, and then I believe we'll need to check that the keys are still current. I think we might need to, for example, to update Daniel's key on that repo. But it all feels like things that could happen after it transfers over, and then we can actually properly look at it.
And then go through and see what adjustments to make to the onboarding documentation, and could even provide something for people to verify against this repository, which might be a nice script for folks to use rather than writing their own.
I know the Docker team are actively trying to verify releases against our release keys, and I think there's some projects related to the Google Cloud platform, which also does some key verifications, and they occasionally go awry when we
Yeah.
new release keys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess on this call, does anyone object to the idea? No. And does anyone have a preference on naming other than Node.js release keys, which was the last suggested by Michael and myself? And great. Yep. Okay. So yeah, if we give our thumbs up and just say no concerns from the release side of moving the repository and naming it Node.js release keys, we can probably get moving. Perhaps between one of our admins, we can just get moved over and figure out where to go from there in our next couple of sessions.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. And with that, are there any other topics on the backlog anyone would like to raise?
Where are we with the releases email alias? Is that is that just waiting on more people to respond?
Yeah, I see Miles's comment around the discussion board. Only releases can see that discussion board, is that right? Any members of the release?
Yes. No. I think anyone in the org can see the teams.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. You might be able to. You may be able to say. I think when you post to it, you can choose whether your post is public or.
Oh, only to members of the team.
Yeah.
I've seen that setting. So the main intention for this alias was like when there's a security release that needs a volunteer releaser, they don't need to find one of us who then has to go ask everyone else kind of like what their availability is. They could just either send an email to one place or post something in one place where we would all see it and be able to volunteer.
See, I certainly wouldn't advocate moving discussions to email. I don't think that's a good place to have conversations. But if it is simple things like searching for releases, for security releases, where
that was the only
time boxed concern that we
But yeah, I think we did have, like, for one of the previous security releases, like folks didn't even know we needed volunteers, possibly because we had like such a massive notifications, and some folks have more than others, so it's not always possible to keep up. That was the only real situation we were trying to account for, is like when folks are not able to keep up with the Node.js private notifications to see the call for releases. But there didn't seem to be a massive desire for, or massive like against between our groups, so that's why it's not kind of moved. I don't know whether folks have more stronger opinions or better ways we could handle that situation, just to bring it, like, raise the urgency of these releases.
Maybe we could name the alias so that it's more specific to what the appropriate topics are, so that people are more, when they're typing it in, it's like clear what they're using it for. I don't know, like if it was called Node.js security release or something.
Yeah, I guess it's not, that might be the name in the private org, because I think we have to duplicate all our teams in that org, don't we?
Yeah, that's correct. I think it is called something like security releases or something in Node private.
That's true.
But I mean, we can name the email alias anything we want because it's just an alias.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that would make sense then. Creating an alias specifically called security release, and then that would kind of enforce
There's no
we
other
don't-
chatter on it.
yeah, would discourage it being used for anything generic that could be public. That sounds good. I can add that to minutes as a proposal, and then point it out in the PR to merge the minutes, and then if folks have any objections there, they can raise them, and then if that lands and people are like +1 spot it, then I think go forward and open the PR to create that alias, the security release one, and update the security release documentation to email that. I think that seems like a reasonable approach, but people can obviously object at any point if they really don't like the idea of the alias. Okay, I can take that as an action to make sure it's called out in the minutes as a proposal, and then work with the email repository to see how we'd create it. Are there any other issues on the list? I don't believe so. I guess there's the trim active releases list. For that one, I think all that's left to do is someone to go in and wipe all of the keys and then populate them with the keys we all mentioned in here. But I guess that's like something people would be conscious of doing, because you don't want to just go in and wipe when you don't necessarily know what every key was for.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how we proceed with that unless someone assumes that risk.
I can take a look and try and match the keys to existing releases, perhaps.
Okay, yeah, that'd be helpful. Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of
There should be some, hopefully, if the releases that are now moved away still have their keys public, there might be ones that we can obviously exclude, which might be a good start.
yeah.
Yeah, conscious of just wiping it and adding new, because I'm sure there's some system or something that was essentially relying on it.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a question there, so okay, that'd be good.
Yeah, no, yeah, Mike was just posting in the chat that there's a number of keys without a label, which I think does tie in what I've seen before.
Yeah.
But yeah, at worst we can probably save it away in the .ssh directory with the sort of old name.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, and sort of
Late from new. Yeah, it might be worth trying. Okay, I'll probably leave it to you to dig in a little bit on that. It's not pressing because it's also been open for a couple of years, but it'd be good to just tidy up our keys if possible and make sense at the same time with dealing with the keys elsewhere.
yeah, well, I mean, this is specifically the SSH keys, not the GPG signing keys. Yeah.
Okay, any other topics to raise? Okay, with that, thanks everyone for joining, and see you all next time.
Bye.